third chance, but this is going to be a lot to come back from a pretty embarrassing exit out of Jacksonville.
Yeah, a lot of these stories happening in the NFL this season. I had forgotten the John Gruden situation already until you had brought it up, though. Urban Meyer, definitely a colorful figure in pro football. Let's talk still about another colorful figure in pro football, and that, of course, is Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington football team now. And there's an investigation going on in that club. What's the latest on that, Dan?
Oh man, this Snyder story. Every time you think that the train stops, it just keeps going again. Credit to the Washington Post. They've been continuing to dig on this. It's not lost on me that Jeff Bezos has the connection to the Post, and Jeff Bezos is rumored to want to buy an NFL team, and he keeps going at Dan Snyder. So, if you want to, do your little pinboard and try to figure out why the Washington Post keeps going at it, very, very fair. So here's where we're at. I think last you and I spoke about it. The world was paying attention to these leaked emails that cost, we mentioned John Gruden his job. So when these, there was talk of these 650,000 secret emails, only like a handful of which were leaked and cost Gruden his job, there was a groundswell of release the report. We want to know what's in the emails. So there had been an investigation that was conducted into the Washington football team. That's really where the story kind of comes and goes. We don't know what was done in that investigation. It's really been locked up by the NFL. They don't want to release the investigative report. All we know is that from this, these certain emails came out, and Dan Snyder was fined $10 million. What came out this past week is very interesting. Essentially, Dan Snyder hired a law firm, a lawyer named Beth Wilkinson and her law firm, to investigate his own team. So the narrative for a couple of months had been, hey, the fix was in, this law firm, they were hired by Snyder, they were always going to try to protect him. The narrative has all of a sudden flipped on its head. At least according to the Washington Post, Snyder had been going through great lengths to basically thwart this lawyer's investigation of his own team, even going so far, former Washington general counsel, of suing Beth Wilkinson to prevent her from giving information to the NFL. So now you suddenly have a picture of this lawyer that Snyder maybe handpicked to kind of rubber stamp it and get him off the hook, a lawyer that's now out to really seek the truth. And when we really circle in, Andrew, it's very interesting. A 2009 incident that resulted in a $1.6 million sexual harassment settlement as alleged by the Post. Snyder's been trying to cover this thing up and keep it secret. And Beth Wilkinson, the attorney that Snyder hired himself, was poking around and relayed the results of that investigation to the NFL. We don't exactly still know what happened, but Congress has now circled back. They want to know what's going on. They want to know about this 2009 investigation. So all of a sudden, it's all alarms going off at Washington HQ.
And there have been some reporting to suggest Roger Goodell's role in all of this, if he has tipped the scales or put a hand in this. Is that true? Is he, interfering or not?
Well, it's the allegation from this Post article is that Snyder was trying to obstruct the investigation. And it's a big allegation. So when Goodell was asked to comment, his comment was pretty interesting. He goes, he's aware of the Post story, but he doesn't believe that Snyder's obstructionist tactics actually influenced the outcome of the investigation. So if Snyder attempted to thwart the investigation, that should be a crime in and of itself, right? You don't have to murder someone to get charged with a crime, or attempted murder, attempted assault. We'll see if Goodell wants to do anything here, but I believe this is new information to Goodell. I don't think he knew the extent that Snyder and his team had gone to try to thwart the investigation. But from the comments we saw from Goodell, I don't think he's ready to assert any type of additional punishment, particularly on the million type fine that was given to Snyder. But yeah, optics are not good. You have former employees protesting Washington football games. You have Congress coming after Washington. You have Goodell. And again, Andrew, I pointed it out. Why is this happening? The Washington Post here again. These teams don't come up for sale that often, so you connect the dots here if you want.
No, that's so interesting. I had not connected those dots, and of course they are still under a lot of pressure to pick a name, right, Dan?
Yeah, Washington football team. You and I had spoken about this, in previous episodes. There have been teams, most famously the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, who have really botched their name changes. And I think that's just one more kind of eyesore on the Washington football team. Their name, when announcers try to refer to them, is called the football team. So in addition to all this chaos going on at HQ, you don't have a real team. Like, how hard is it to pick a team name, pick a logo? They've been sitting on it for about 2 years. So I think they're worried about trademark disputes and whatnot. But just, I don't know, not much is going right for Washington. The team is not terrible this year, but from an administrative level, from a, an organizational structure level, it's a lot of chaos there.
Dan, last topic, and I had seen you tweeting about this earlier today, and this regards a prominent player in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, and his brother, getting a lot of flack on social media. And let's talk about that. I know it's not a major headline, but, Mahomes is playing in Kansas City tonight, I believe. Let's just talk about that for a little bit.
Andrew, it is a major story. If you are on social media in any way, shape, or form, for some reason, Jackson Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes' brother, is like the most hated person on social media. Why is that? Number of levels, right? He's of the younger TikTok generation, so maybe people don't like that. There's a very kind of infamous incident where he was dancing on a memorial that was set up for the late safety for the Washington football team, Sean Taylor. So, if you want to say the guy's entitled, I'm seeing the comments left and right. The latest on Jackson Mahomes, I guess he went to a bar in Kansas City, obviously where his brother is famous, and took to social media to try to cancel, and try to make this local establishment feel bad for not treating him right, not giving him VIP treatment. And this restaurant, I think it's SOT Bar in Kansas City, I'll give him a shout out, wrote one of the most scathing commentaries and scathing responses to Mahomes, and just called him entitled, called him a brat, said, maybe you shouldn't be dancing on people's memorials. And good for them. I don't think Jackson Mahomes has any fans at all. I'm not sure why why he has such a huge following, but yeah, I think it was kind of a little bit of karma biting him. He took to social media to take out a small business, and the small business that people outside of Kansas City have never heard of now gets a big win and taking a victory lap across social media here.
And Dan, just for those of us who don't follow family members of star athletes, does Jackson Mahomes, is he an athlete in and of himself, or no, he's just a brother?
Do you call TikTok dancing an athletic sport?
Okay.
No, he is not. And maybe at some point he was like a middle school superstar, but as far as I'm aware, he is no Jordan Palmer or anything like that. That's the younger brother of Aaron Rodgers. Nothing like that.
Okay. Dan Lust, as always, we appreciate your time. If we don't speak before the holidays, have a great holiday.
You too. And always a pleasure coming on with you, Andrew.
All right, Dan. Have a good one.
All right. Always thankful for Dan Lust and giving us the latest on those top headlines in the sports world. We're going to take just a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be showing you an event from the White House today. President Biden awarding Medals of Honor to our nation's heroes. We'll have that in just a moment. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. I want to thank you for being with us on your Thursday night. Let's take a live look at the White House while we have it right now. It's coming up on the 10 o'clock hour there on the East Coast. A really moving ceremony today there with President Biden awarding 3 medals of honor, 2 posthumously, 1 in person, to our war heroes. Fox's Jennifer Griffin has that story.
Today we honor 3 outstanding soldiers whose actions embody the highest ideals of selfless service.
President Joe Biden awarded the Medal of Honor to Master Sergeant Earl Plumley for his heroism in Afghanistan. Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cash and Sergeant First Class Christopher Solis received the medal posthumously.
Outnumbered with no regard for his own safety, at times armed with only a pistol, Staff Sergeant Plumley attacked the insurgent forces, taking them on one by one.
10 insurgents wearing Afghan army uniforms and suicide vests blew a 60-foot hole through the base wall with a 400-pound car bomb in Ghazni province in 2013. Plumley, an active-duty Green Beret, killed 1 Afghan insurgent using a grenade and another suicide bomber with precision sniper fire.
It's a life or death profession that we're in. You may only get one chance to get something right, so put your all into it and do it to the best of your ability.
Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cash is the first black recipient of the Medal of Honor since Vietnam.
Alwyn Cash was a soldier's soldier, a warrior who literally walked through fire for his troops.
He pulled 6 fellow soldiers out of a burning Bradley fighting vehicle in Iraq in 2005, even though he himself was drenched in fuel. He died in a U.S. Army hospital with burns over 72% of his body. 3 of the 6 soldiers survived. He was the youngest of 10 children.
I tell anybody, he taught me to live, enjoy it, make the most out of every opportunity, because you don't always get a do-over.
Sergeant First Class Solis put himself between the Taliban and a rescue helicopter during a fierce firefight in Afghanistan 3 years ago.
Sergeant Solis used his body as a shield for the aircraft and his crew against the heavy incoming fire.
He waved off the pilots who wanted to return for him after he'd been shot, knowing they would all likely die if they did.
He didn't believe in awards and everything. He believed that you did good for the sake of doing good.
At the Pentagon, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
Jennifer, thanks so much for that moving look back at the ceremony today. Right now, though, we're going to take the opportunity to replay that ceremony in the East Room of the White House. President Biden awarding 3 medals of honor today, 2 posthumously, 1 in person, to veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we mark this very special occasion in prayer. Gracious and merciful Lord, you are the giver of life, the igniter of faith, provider of hope, and the author of love. Mighty One, O Ancient of Days, you have commanded us to be strong and courageous in life or in death because you are always with us. Receive your servant's most humble prayer as we gather today to honor and celebrate 3 selfless exemplars of unquestioned commitment and courageous valor. Father, we are thankful for Master Sergeant Earl Plumley, Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cash, and Sergeant First Class Christopher Solis, who embody the sacrificial willingness to lay down one's life for their friends. Each of these men took heroic actions in the face of fear and certain death. Lord, you gave our nation and army the heart of a special forces warrior to free the oppressed, the soul of a dog-faced soldier with a can-do attitude, and the fighting spirit of a ranger to lead the way. When our nation asked who will go, each of these men declared, "Here I am, send me." Faith, hope, and love propelled these men to display the compassion, care, and commitment necessary to throw themselves into the fray to save others. As a grateful nation, help us today as we bestow its highest honor on these men of valor who distinguished themselves at the risk of their own lives above and beyond the call of duty. Bless those that we honor today, and I thank you for the many family members, comrades in arms, and dear friends who are here with us today, and others in spirit to support them. May the actions of these men in the crucible of combat inspire others to personal courage and selfless service. Keep the lamp of liberty shining forth brightly across our nation, and let us always serve as a beacon of hope to a freedom-loving people. It is in your holy, majestic, and magnificent name that I pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the East Room of the White House, decorated for the holiday season and to celebrate the gift of gratitude. It's an appropriate backdrop for this ceremony, we believe, because our hearts are overflowing with gratitude today as we honor the unparalleled courage and commitment to duty and the indispensable, indisputable gallantry and it's just hard to explain where your soldiers got the courage they got. The late Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cash, late Sergeant First Class Christopher Salise, Master Sergeant Earl Plumley, and our nation's newest recipients of our highest military award, the Medal of Honor. I want to thank all of our distinguished guests that are here today, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of the Secretary Austin, the enlisted advisor, Chairman Colin Lopez, and the leaders of the United States Army, and the Vice President of the United States, and the second gentleman, and I'm Jill's husband. Jill is here. As we add these three names to our nation's roll of honor, I also want to recognize previous Medal of Honor recipients who are here today to honor their brothers in arms. Matthew Williams. Matthew, stand up so people can see. Thomas Paine. And Edward Byers. Each of you know what it means to stare down danger and summon the strength in the moment of trial. We're grateful for all that you three have done, so many more. And the family of Sergeant First Class Alwyn Chase has been 16 years, this has been 16 years in coming. Representative Murphy, Representative Walz, thank you for your efforts, continued efforts, along with the team, Sergeant Cash, his commanders, Commander-in-Arms, his medical team, and the family, who worked with such dedication over so many years to make this recognition possible. October 17, 2005, Sergeant Cash was commanding a Bradley fighting vehicle on night patrol in Iraq. They came under enemy fire. An improvised explosive device detonated, igniting the vehicle's fuel and engulfing it in flames. Sergeant extracted himself and without hesitation turned back to the vehicle to help free the driver and extinguish flames on the driver. In the process, Sergeant First Class Cash uniform, drenched in fuel, caught fire, causing severe burns. Patrol was still taking enemy fire, but Cash thought only of his fellow soldiers trapped in the troop compartment. So he pushed his own pain aside and returned to the burning vehicle and pulled 4 soldiers free, 4 more. At this point, with the 2nd and 3rd degree burns covering almost 75% of his body, his uniform mostly burned away. The sergeant saw there were still 2 soldiers and their interpreter unaccounted for. So he went back into the inferno for a 3rd time and got everyone out of that inferno. That was his before he would go. Later, at Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas, where he and other members of his team were taken for treatment, when he regained the ability to speak, his first thoughts were for his units. He asked, first thing, how are my boys? How are my boys? Alwyn Cash was a soldier, a warrior who literally walked through fire for his troops. Sergeant succumbed to his injuries in November 8, 2005, surrounded by those who loved and loved him. He was a hero. He was a beloved son and brother, a proud husband and a father of 3 children. Sergeant Cash and his family gave everything for our country. their devotion to his memory, their years working to make sure that his courage and selflessness were properly documented and honored, is a testament to the love he inspired and the legacy he left behind. Sergeant First Class Cash is now the 7th individual to receive a Medal of Honor for his actions in Operation Iraqi Freedom, and the first African American to receive it since the Vietnam War. And Tamara, Alexis, Casanal, I'm so honored to award your husband, your dad, your brother, recognition that he earned. I know it's tough. As honored as you are, it's got to be tough to be here today. He'll be remembered. He'll be remembered forever. Sergeant First Class Christopher Solis was an Army Ranger through and through with 175. The Rangers lead the way. On July 12th, 2018, nearing the end of the fifth deployment, Sergeant Solis was leading an operation in the Patika province of Afghanistan. Not a very friendly place. To clear the area of enemy forces. Attacked and pinned down by a large force, the sergeant exposed himself to the enemy fire in order to retrieve a heavy weapon system that allowed his team to fight back and reach the secure location. During the firefight, a member of his team was critically wounded as they called for medical evacuation. But as the rescue helicopter arrived and began taking fire as well, the sergeant knew it was critical to get his wounded teammate loaded and treated. So he once again, knowingly and willingly, stepped into the enemy's crosshairs. Sergeant Solis used his body as a shield for the aircraft and his crew against the heavy incoming fire. The helicopter began to take off and he put himself directly between the cockpit and the enemy, ensuring the aircraft could depart and sustaining what would prove to be a mortal wound. He knew he was hit, but he waved for the aircrew to depart without him. In the face of extreme danger, he placed the safety of his team and his crew above his own. I can offer no better encapsulation than the words of the U.S. Army ambulance pilot in command that day. He said, quote, "Courage to me is putting your life on the line to save the life of another, as demonstrated by Sergeant First Class Chris Solis, who died protecting my crew," end of quote. Christopher Solis was courage made flesh. Today, we add his name to the elite vanguard of American warriors who generation after generation have strengthened and inspired our nation with their unwavering bravery and service. His legacy lives on in the lives he saved, the teammates he mentored, and the memories he made with his beloved wife, Katie, and especially in their precious daughter, Shannon. Thank you for sharing your dad with our country, Shannon. We'll never forget the debt that we owe you and your whole family. August 28, 2013, then Staff Sergeant Earl Pumley was snapping a quick photo with members of his unit at Forward Operation Base Ghazni in Afghanistan. Then insurgents turned out detonated a 400-pound car bomb that blew open a 60-foot wide breach in the perimeter wall. Staff Sergeant Pumley, members of his special operations team, immediately hopped in the nearby truck and raced toward the blast to defend the base. When they arrived, they encountered insurgents coming through the wall, all wearing explosive vests. Our troops started taking rocket fire, recoilless rifle fire, and small arms fire, while the driver of their truck maneuvered into the line of enemy fire to shield injured members of their team outside the vehicle. The staff sergeant exited the vehicle and used his own body to shield the driver. He left whatever cover the truck provided him and began to engage the invaders. Outnumbered with no regard for his own safety, at times armed with only a pistol, Staff Sergeant Plumley attacked the insurgent forces, taking them on one by one. And time and again, bullets flew by, sometimes only inches away. And time and again, Staff Sergeant Plumley closed with the enemy. On multiple occasions during the fight, the insurgents detonated their vest right in front of Plumley, at one point hurling him into a wall and injuring his back. When a fellow soldier was severely wounded, Plumley immediately ran to the soldier's position, carried him to safety, and administered tactical combat casualty care before returning to the fight. Ultimately, Staff Sergeant Plumley was able to organize 3 Polish soldiers to mount an effective defense of the base, clear the area, and regain the security posture. His heroic actions in the battlefield leadership gained the recognition of some of our highest military commanders, including the man who knows a little bit about battles, our chairman of our Joint Chiefs, General Milley, and General McConville, who are here today. We're here today to honor him as well. They saw extraordinary bravery when then Staff Sergeant Plumley did, and they understood the worst outcome he prevented from taking place. They understood what would have happened had he not done what he did. Now, Master Sergeant Plumley has this recognition has been too long in coming, delayed for you and your family as well. And no one will ever forget how you sprang into action when the enemy attacked our base. I'm grateful for your continued service and dedication to the country. And that goes for your wife Terry and your children Lillian and Lincoln as well. Because it's not just the person who wears the uniform who serves. It's the whole family who serves. The sleepless nights, the missed holidays, the empty chairs, the celebrations, the way you give back to your community. The English poet John Milton once wrote, "They also serve who only stand and wait. They also serve who only stand and wait." While today we honor 3 outstanding soldiers whose actions embody the highest ideals of selfless service, we also remember the high price our military members and their families are willing to pay on behalf of our nation. We remember the strength and the sacrifices of these military families, caregivers, and survivors. And we remember and renew our sacred obligation to those who serve this nation in uniform. As a nation, we have many obligations to our children, the elderly, those in need, but we have only one truly sacred obligation. Sacred obligation. That's to properly prepare and equip those troops we send into harm's way, care for them and their families, both while they're deployed and when they return. That commitment never expires. And as Commander-in-Chief, I promise it's a commitment that we will keep. So God bless you all. And may God protect the troops who are out there right now. Now it's my great honor to ask for the citations to be read and award the Medal of Honor to Sergeant First Class Alwyn Chase, Sergeant First Class Christopher Slees, and Master Sergeant Earl Plumley.
Will the Cash family please join the President on stage? Attention orders. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3rd, 1863, has possibly awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant First Class Alwyn C. Cash, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant First Class Alwyn C. Cash distinguished himself by acts of gallantry above and beyond the call of duty while serving as platoon sergeant with Company A, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, in Saladin Province, Iraq, on October 17, 2005. While on a nighttime mounted patrol near an enemy-laden village, the Bradley fighting vehicle which Sergeant First Class Cash was commanding was attacked by enemy small arms fire and an improvised explosive device, which disabled the vehicle and engulfed it in flames. After extracting himself from the vehicle, Sergeant First Class Cash set about extracting the driver, who was trapped in the vehicle. After opening the driver's hatch, Sergeant First Class Cash and a fellow soldier extracted the driver, who was engulfed in the flames. During the course of extinguishing the flames on the driver and extracting him from the vehicle, Sergeant First Class Cash's fuel soaked his uniform, igniting and causing severe burns to his body. Ignoring his painful wounds, Sergeant First Class Cash then moved to the rear of the vehicle to continue in aiding his fellow soldiers who were trapped in the troop compartment. At this time, the enemy noted his movements and began to direct their fire on his position. When another element of the company engaged the enemy, Sergeant First Class Cash seized the opportunity and moved into the open troop door and aided 4 of his soldiers in escaping the burning vehicle. Having extracted the 4 soldiers, Sergeant First Class Cash noticed 2 other soldiers had not been accounted for, and again, he entered the building to retrieve them. At this time, reinforcements arrived to further suppress the enemy and establish a casualty collection point. Despite the severe 2nd and 3rd degree burns covering the majority of his body, Sergeant First Class Cash persevered through the pain to encourage his fellow soldiers and ensure they received needed medical care. When medical evacuation helicopters began to arrive, Sergeant First Class Cash selflessly refused evacuation until all of the other wounded soldiers were evacuated first. Sergeant First Class Cash's extraordinary heroism and selfishness above and beyond the call of duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of the military, service, and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, the President of the United States. Will the Solis family please accompany the President? Attention orders. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress March 3rd, 1863, has possibly awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Solis, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant First Class Christopher A. Solis distinguished himself by conspicuous gallantry above and beyond the call of duty while engaged with the enemy in Paktia Province, Afghanistan on July 12, 2018. As a leader of a special purpose unit comprised of partner forces and members of the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, Sergeant First Class Solis led an operation to clear an area of enemy forces and thereby disrupt future attacks against the government of Afghanistan and allied forces. Shortly after his team reached their final objectives, a large enemy force attacked, placed effective fire on him and his team, preventing them from maneuvering to counterattack. Realizing the danger the attack posed to his team in the operation, Sergeant First Class Solis voluntarily exposed himself to intense enemy machine gun and small arms fire to retrieve and deploy a heavy weapon system, thereby allowing U.S. and partner forces to regain the initiative, maneuver to a secure location, and begin treatment of a critically wounded partner force member. As the medical evacuation helicopter arrived, it was immediately engaged by accurate and sustained enemy fire. Knowing how critical it was to quickly load the casualty, Sergeant First Class Solis willingly exposed himself to heavy enemy fire to direct and lead the evacuation. As the casualty moved from a position of cover and out into intense enemy fire, Sergeant First Class Solis made a conscious effort to ensure his body acted as a physical shield to his team carrying the casualty and the crew of the aircraft. As the casualty was loaded and Sergeant First Class Solis' team returned to cover, he alone remained at the aircraft, returning a high volume of fire and constantly repositioning himself to act as a physical shield to the aircraft and its crew. With his final reposition, Sergeant First Class Solis placed himself directly between the cockpit and the enemy, ensuring the aircraft was able to depart. As the helicopter lifted off, Sergeant First Class Solis was hit by enemy fire. Fully aware of his own injury, but understanding the peril to the aircraft from the intense enemy machine gun fire, Sergeant First Class Solis motioned to the aircraft to depart rather than to remain behind to load him. His selfless action saved the life of the evacuated partner force member and almost certainly prevented further casualties among other members of his team and the aircrew. Throughout the entire engagement, Sergeant First Class Solis significantly changed the course of battle by repeatedly placing himself in extreme danger to protect his team, defeat the enemy, and ultimately cost him his life. Sergeant First Class Solis' extraordinary heroism and selfless above and beyond the call of duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, the President of the United States. Master Sergeant Plumley, will you please accompany the President? Attention to orders. The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress March 3rd, 1863, has possibly awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Earl D. Plumley, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry at the risk of his life and above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Earl D. Plumley distinguished himself by acts of gallantry above and beyond the call of duty on August 28, 2013, while serving as a weapons sergeant, C Company, 4th Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group Airborne, in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Sergeant Plumley instantly responded to an enemy attack on Forward Operating Base Ghazni Province, Afghanistan, that began with an explosion that tore a 60-foot breach in the base's perimeter wall. 10 insurgents wearing Afghan National Army uniforms and suicide vests poured through the breach. Sergeant Plumley and 5 others mounted 2 vehicles and raced towards the explosion. When his vehicle was engaged by enemy fire, Sergeant Plumley reacted instinctively, using his body to shield the driver prior to exiting the vehicle and engaging an enemy insurgent 15 meters to the vehicle's right with his pistol. Without cover and complete disregard for his own safety, he advanced on the enemy, engaging multiple insurgents with only his pistol. Upon reaching cover, he killed 2 insurgents, one with a grenade and the other by detonating insurgent's suicide vest using precision sniper fire. Again, disregarding his own safety, Sergeant Plumley advanced alone against the enemy, engaging several insurgents at close range, including one whose suicide vest exploded a mere 7 meters from his position. Under intense enemy fire, Sergeant Plumley temporarily withdrew to cover, where he joined up with another soldier, and together they mounted another counterattack. Under fierce enemy fire, Sergeant Plumley again moved from cover and attacked the enemy forces, advancing with 7 meters of a previously wounded insurgent who detonated his suicide vest, blowing Sergeant Plumley back against a nearby wall. Sergeant Plumley, ignoring his injuries, quickly regained his faculties and re-engaged the enemy forces. Intense enemy fire once again forced the 2 soldiers to temporarily withdraw. Undeterred, Sergeant Plumley joined a small group of American Polish soldiers, who moved from cover to once again counterattack the infiltrators. As the force advanced, Sergeant Plumley engaged an insurgent to his front left. He then swung around and engaged another insurgent who charged the group from the rear. The insurgent detonated his suicide vest, mortally wounding a U.S. soldier. Sergeant Plumley, again, without complete disregard for his own safety, ran to the wounded soldier, carried him to safety, and rendered first aid. He then methodically cleared the area, remained in a security posture, and continued to scan for any remaining threats. Staff Sergeant Earl D. Plumley's extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty are keeping with the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the Special Forces Regiment, and the United States Army. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, the President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we conclude this ceremony in prayer. Most holy God, as we leave this ceremony, inspire us and lead us to greater acts of service. May we have the audacity to follow the examples of the warriors we honored here today. Bless Master Sergeant Plumley, the Cash and Solis families, as the names of these men are etched into our nation's proud history. May their leadership and legacies mark the truest north for us to seek. And may we all strive to be strong and courageous in the face of challenges that life may bring. Finally, we pray that you will give our leaders wisdom as they serve our nation and our Army's people, and that you will bless and protect the men and women of our armed forces as they preserve those precious freedoms. I ask these things in your most gracious and holy name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats as the President and First Lady and Vice President and Second Gentleman depart.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we played that ceremony in its entirety today. You can see Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, right there, along with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin for this Medal of Honor ceremony. 3 veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan awarded, just 1 in person, 2 posthumously. So we're going to be moving on to some other stories. I'm Andrew Kraft. We're at the bottom of the hour here, a little after 8:30 in Phoenix, Arizona, a little after 10:30 on the East Coast. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Pretty very dangerous week for police around the country. This is video from a scene late last night out of Queens, New York, where an off-duty NYPD officer was shot several times. Thankfully, he is expected to survive. He's lucky to be alive tonight. We're going to hear from NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea announcing an investigation into this. You can see the scene quite active from last night, but here's the press conference from earlier today.
Uniformed members from the 114 precinct responded to a call for an officer shot at 57th Street and Northern Boulevard. Upon arrival, officers encountered two males with gunshot wounds laying on the ground. One of the males was identified as an off-duty NYPD lieutenant. Preliminarily, he sustained multiple gunshot wounds about the body. The other male is a suspected shooter in the case. A semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine was recovered from his immediate vicinity. The firearm is displayed here by Chief O'Reilly. Both the off-duty officer and the suspect were taken here to Elmhurst General Hospital. The current status of the officer is critical, but thankfully stable condition. The shooting suspect sustained a gunshot wound to his chest and stomach. He was pronounced deceased at approximately 3:35 a.m. At this point, the investigation remains very active and ongoing. Preliminarily, we believe the off-duty officer was present at a nightclub located in the vicinity of the shooting at 57th Street and Northern Boulevard. At some point, the officer exits the club, where he is confronted by several armed individuals wearing masks. We believe these individuals were attempting to rob the officer, possibly of jewelry that the officer was wearing. Moments later, there was an exchange of gunfire between the officer and at least one of the perpetrators. The remaining suspects fled the scene, possibly in a vehicle. Investigators are at the scene actively looking for witnesses and canvassing for video as we speak. We would ask anyone with information to call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-577-TIPS. Finally, I want to thank Dr. Badia, who is here, all of the hospital nurses and doctors at this hospital, not just for tonight what they do, but what they do every night. And most importantly, I'd like to forget somebody that sometimes we forget to mention, the FDNY paramedics. We just came from a briefing where we watched the body camera of the first responding officers, and I think we would have a very different outcome if not for the professionalism of those FDNY paramedics and for what they did to save our officers' life. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over briefly to Lou Turco from the LBA, who is up here, and then I'll take some questions.
Thanks, Commissioner. He hit on, we saw the body camera, and, this officer had minutes to live, and FDNY, the first responding officers, and then the FDNY, I can't believe how much work and how dedicated they were to saving this officer's life, and then to bring him here and the staff at Elmhurst, just a phenomenal job. But as I was coming here, I was trying to think, what are we going to say? We say it all the time. We got lucky tonight. We got lucky tonight. It's like, when is this luck going to run out? And I'm saying, I got to stop with this luck stuff, And we always talk about getting guns off the street. We got to get guns off the street. Yes, we got to get guns off the street. We got to get the individual carrying the gun off the street. There's two parts to this, not just the gun. If you just get the gun and not the individual, he goes and gets another gun. We're missing it. These individuals carrying guns should not be on the street. And stop with just getting guns off the street. Change the narrative to get the individual and the gun off the street. So let's see if we can get that message out, because we're losing it out there. There's too many guns out there, and we're going to run into one, and we're not going to be as lucky. But thank you. Thanks, Commissioner.
So I'll take some questions. It is very early in the investigation, but we'll do our best to answer what you have. Any questions? Rocco?
Did they target him from inside the club? Was there some dispute?
It's very early as we hear. We have nothing about a dispute at this point in time. Rocco, it's extremely early. We know that there is a point in time. The lieutenant worked last night. He worked till approximately, I think, just before midnight. He comes off duty to this club. We know he's in that club for a period of time. At some point, he comes outside, and that's where what we believe to be an attempted robbery takes place.
Is it a pattern?
Well, it's very early, so we know that this MO is being currently investigated. We have a number of incidents. I think we've briefed the media before. There is a citywide pattern of individuals going to nightclubs, wearing jewelry, coming out and being targeted. I think we released a body-worn camera video just in the last week or two of an officer in Manhattan exchanging gunfire as a car trying to escape drives down the sidewalk. We recovered a gun in that incident as well. So that's certainly something that we're going to look at. What we know right now is we have preliminary information that there is multiple perpetrators wearing full mask, not a COVID mask, a ski mask, and multiple perpetrators that are all armed. That's what we have. The story sometimes changes in this line of work, but it would certainly fit the existing patterns that we have.
Any name or priors on the suspect of the deceased?
We're not going to release, for pending notification to family, etc. We have the perpetrator that is deceased identified. He has one prior arrest last year in New York City. He may have additional outside New York City, but in New York City, one arrest for a gang assault. And that's an active case. Any last questions, Rocco?
Did you characterize the club at all as far as past problems, drugs, narcotics?
I don't have any of that as a.
And is it an off-limits spot?
Not to my knowledge. Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, is there any interaction between the off-duty officer and the people who were in the club prior to the incident outside?
That'll be all part of the investigation, but we do not have that currently. We have the officer in the club. He leaves the club at some point in time, and that's where we have what we believe to be an attempted robbery. We have multiple shots fired. We believe we have 8 shots fired by our officer. We believe we have 9 shots fired at this point in time. That could change by the suspects. We do not know. It would be too early to say if it's all fired by one suspect, but ballistics and video will come together and we'll get a clearer picture on that.
The other suspects that are outstanding, they also had guns, but it's unclear if they fired rounds.
That's accurate. I mean, we have 2 groupings of shell casings. It's entirely possible they came from one from the officer's gun, one from one suspect's gun, but we've seen that change over time too. So we do have an individual telling us, uninvolved in the incident, that we have 3 individuals wearing masks, all armed with firearms. So that's what we're right now, but it's very early, and that story could have changed as we're standing here.
Last question right here. You all characterize more the lieutenant's condition right now. Is he alert? Is he talking? What kind of spirit is he in?
He was conscious when I arrived. I was able to briefly interact with him. He has multiple gunshot wounds. He is lucky to be alive, and he is in critical but stable condition. So everyone should, keep him in your thoughts and prayers tonight. We would have a very different outcome if not for the FDNY paramedics that did incredible work on the street to get him here, and Elmhurst Hospital taking it from there, and the hospital staff and the critical ER staff here, the doctors, the nurses, the team that really got us to where we are right now. So he's in our thoughts and prayers, and we're hoping for a strong recovery.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so an update on that officer shot in Queens, an off-duty officer in stable condition at this time, so a good update from them. We're going to take a 2-minute commercial break. When we come back, we are giving you the latest on those 10 Astroworld victims. We have new information about the cause of death. We spoke with an expert when it comes to medical examiners and what they look for in all of these cases. So details on that coming up. breaking news coming out of Houston, specifically about Astro World. We've been talking about these 10 victims of the Astro World Fest tragedy last month. Well, we are learning tonight that they all died of compression asphyxia. The Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences released the cause and manner of death of these victims. They were all in the range of 9 to 27 years old. So just a devastating situation for all of these kids, all these people who are involved. And to dive a little bit deeper into all of this, I want to bring in our former senior investigator with the Medical Examiner of Atlanta, Joseph Morgan. Thank you so much for being with us here on the show. He also works out of Jacksonville State University, so you know about all of this. We've had you on the show previously talking about cause of death cases like Gabby Petito. This one quite different because it concerns 10 different individuals. Hearing this update, what is compression asphyxia?
This evening, Daytona, and we begin to think about compression asphyxia. There are a multiplicity of types of asphyxial deaths. We think about choking, those sorts of things, but compression asphyxia is very unique in the fact that it takes a tremendous amount of weight being pressed down on top of an individual that is lying, say, for instance, on a firm surface, like an asphalt surface, a concrete surface, or even a wooden floor. And it's dependent upon the amount of weight that is placed upon the individual. Now, if everybody at home will simply think about the process of breathing just for a second. When we inhalate, we take in a breath, we exhale like this, okay? In the normal course, we can breathe in more air, right? But as you're being compressed like this, you're compromising the spaces in your lungs to be able to uptake more oxygen. And that's what's happening in this case. It's a very, very slow death. It's not something that happens suddenly. This is not like a car accident where an individual sustains major head trauma. It's not like a gunshot wound where it's over in a twinkling of an eye. This is a lingering death, Daytona, that will take a protracted period of time. And it's all dependent upon the size of the individual. Remember, we're talking about a 9-year-old. They're not as robust as, this child is not as robust as, say, a full-grown adult, okay? And you think about that, and then the weight that is being added. If you're in a panicked situation, you've got more and more people that are piling upon. And we've got a lot of other people that are injured. They're very fortunate that not more people were killed in this instance.
Yeah, and that was one of my questions for you, because as we said in the beginning, age 9 to 27 here, you know, I would imagine it's going to affect a 9-year-old's body quite differently than an older person's body. But if my memory serves me right, the 9-year-old was on life support for about a week. So some of these victims were still on life support even after the event happened. Others passed away just that night. Why does that fluctuate?
Well, it's going to fluctuate dependent upon the structure of the body, how robust the body is, as I previously mentioned,
right.
And also a couple of things. First off, what status is the individual in physically? Are they fit? Okay, it comes down to that. Do you have the musculature and the robust skeleton to be able to withstand this kind of pressure? And if you can't, if you're compromised in some way physically, that can be a problem. Also, if you read the report, they talk about how long this took in order for these results to come out. And Daytona, the reason it took so long is the fact that they were waiting on toxicology. So just, you know, many of us have been to concerts. It's a joyous occasion. We want to go out and celebrate with our family and friends. Many people imbibe. They have alcohol to celebrate. So if you've got a lot of alcohol on board, that again is going to further compromise your ability in these strenuous circumstances to thrive. Okay, so they have to look for any kind of alcohol, any kind of substances that these individuals may have had on board. And then to a greater point, I think here, also the structures like in the neck, and this is very dynamic. So you don't know what position any one of these individuals might have been in specifically, but if you had an individual that was crushed, say their neck was, and I'm not talking about the bony structures of the spine, I'm talking about the cartilaginous area in the throat. You know, we're talking about like the larynx, where our windpipe is. That can be crushed as well. So, and then, you know, you just think about the adrenaline that's pumping, panic. I mean, how many people out there have had a panic attack when they're in an enclosed space? Can you imagine having all of these people stacked on top of you? You can't breathe, you're panicking, your blood pressure is going up. It's a horrible, horrible sensation.
Yeah, so the emotional aspect of their circumstances, you're saying, could have contributed to possibly a quicker death.
Yeah, they could have. And this is going to come in play. And all of your viewers are very bright. And they need to follow this case very carefully as it gets into the civil litigation. And I'm going to take you back a little bit. There's been any number of cases that are similar to this. The first thing that we think about is the Who concert back in the 70s. I heard that mentioned immediately as soon as this happened. But you think about our friends over in Great Britain. They had the infamous Liverpool event that happened, a soccer match over there many years ago as well, I think in the late 80s. And that changed the course of how things operate over there. They understand this. But with compression asphyxia, bear with me, with compression asphyxia has been used by mankind for years and years as a form of capital punishment. And the reason it was used is because it's a torturous death. It goes all the way back to the medieval times. And even there's record of it being used during the early settlement of our country. During the Salem witch trials, there was a guy that died as a result of compression asphyxia. So when it comes into civil litigation, you can imagine the term pain and suffering are going to be applied very liberally here. And you'll hear that over and over again.
All right, so with that, what are you specifically going to be watching, or did anything come as a surprise to you from the medical examiner's report of this?
No, because the Institute in Harris County is top notch. It's probably one of the finest forensic institutions in the country. It is not surprising that they took this long. And keep in mind, Daytona, we're talking about 10 bodies here. We're talking about 10 individuals. That's a lot of data to wade through, and they have to be very, very careful. They have to be very specific. They only get one chance to get this right, because there will be a stream of attorneys that are entering that office. They're going to go into the little offices with the doctors there. They're going to sit down. They're going to want to review every one of these reports. They're going to have very direct questions. It would not surprise me if you've got just a multitude of depositions that are going to take place in the realm of medical legal death investigation to really put a fine point on this. And there are going to be a number of experts that are hired to kind of assess the data that has been gleaned at the initial autopsy.
And you're right, Joseph. I'm actually looking at this right now. We have 300 lawsuits from more than 1,000 people that have already been filed for this case against Travis Scott. So, and that's 1,000 and counting. They're all saying that he was negligent in doing the event at the park there. And so that's $3 billion in damages for Travis Scott. So that's what he's looking at.
Yeah, these cases are going to linger for a protracted period of time, I would think. And this is something that needs to closely be examined. You know, this could happen anywhere, Daytona, anywhere. And, you know, depending upon how you feel about government regulation, this sort of thing, this is actually an area that needs to be watched very carefully. You have to guard these areas. You have to have somebody that is going to control the inflow of these people. They're excited. They want to get in there. And all it takes is one thing, and you're going to have a stampede. And unfortunately, that's what happened in this case.
Yeah, well, hopefully this comes as a learning experience for any future music festivals. Just, again, a tragic situation for all of the families involved. Thank you for breaking it down, though. Joseph, we appreciate having you on the show, as always, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon when some of these lawsuits do move forward.
Please do. Thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, we'll talk soon. We're going to... All right, so a great conversation right there as he's extremely knowledgeable about everything on this subject. Like I said in the beginning, we brought him on during the Gabby Petito case when those toxicology reports and the cause of death came out for them as well, the autopsies. Big news. So that story not going away anytime soon. Also, this one, we want to give you an update on Alec Baldwin, because the Santa Fe Fe Sheriff's Department looking to seize Alec Baldwin's cell phone in a new search warrant that it obtained today. Sheriff's Department wants to search Baldwin's phone for any evidence relating to the death of Helena Hutchins. You'll remember she was the cinematographer there on the set of Rust, one of the movies that Alec Baldwin was filming. They said that there might be some evidence on the phone due to individuals using cellular phones during and or after the commission of the crimes. That's word for word from the affidavit that was obtained by Fox News Digital, going on to say that there were several emails and text messages sent and received regarding the movie production Rust in the course of interviews. So this search warrant, again, as we said, being obtained today by the Santa Fe Sheriff's Department as they are the lead investigators still on the case. Any new developments on that in lawsuits, we'll bring it to you here on Live Now. We're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll be right back with some of the other top stories of the day, including weather in Kentucky. Men have actually been there since day one, isn't that right?
Daytona. Within an hour of the first reported storm, the National Guard says they set up an operations center. Now there are hundreds of troops on the ground here helping with these recovery efforts, and some of these guardsmen are from Mayfield. Altogether, there are 695 members of the Kentucky National Guard deployed across 11 counties that suffered some of that extreme storm damage. And these are the people who were first doing those search and rescue efforts, pulling families out of the rubble and the debris. Now they are still here on the ground, going door to door, performing wellness checks. They're also adding an additional layer of law enforcement.
Unfortunate of an incident as this is why men and women join the National Guard.
And when you see this, you want to make sure we're doing everything we can to help the area recover.
And the mission for the National Guard will continue to evolve. Officials say there will be a presence here for weeks and months to come. The most immediate concern is making sure people are safe in their homes as some bad weather rolls in the next 48 hours, and so many structures are still suffering damage that will only get worse with the rain and the wind expected. Now, the National Guard is not the only military presence here. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is also on the ground, and they're tasked with some pretty crucial work, setting up emergency power and restoring public facilities. Daytona.
Yeah, Stephen, you make a good point. There was another front of bad weather that was moving through the Kentucky area. What's it been like today?
Nothing compared to what people here saw over the weekend. We saw some rain, we saw some wind as well, but nothing too bad. We saw fewer people on the street here. Kind of people delayed their recovery efforts, but when the sun's out, people are out putting things away. So hopefully that can all resume once this bad weather rolls through.
And last question for you, Stephen. It'll be tomorrow a week since the tornado came through. What's kind of the energy of the people out there? Are they still distraught over what happened, or is there a sense of hope for the future and recovery efforts that are there?
I think it's a mix of both. We're still hearing stories from survivors explaining, how they went into their basement or hid in their bathtub and how they lost so much. But there's still a lot of hope. So many of those people who talk about what they lost, they know that they're lucky to still be alive, and they tell us that every single time we talk to some of these survivors. So I think there's mixed emotions here, but mostly hope as people go forward. And that's something they'll need as they continue to kind of clear things away for weeks to come. And that'll be before they can rebuild. That's going to be a long time in the future. Daytona.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Fox's Stephen going in Mayfield, Kentucky for us tonight. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. And Governor Beshear also providing an update earlier out of Kentucky on the rescue efforts that are still underway and also the recovery efforts. You remember yesterday, President Biden visited Mayfield, Kentucky alongside him. So here's that from earlier.
Executive order in the short term. Okay. Kentucky Occupational and Health Compliance staff is in Mayfield to address worker safety and health issues. Wage and hour compliance staff are going to be working with USDOL for anything that arises. Department of Workers Claims has identified and spoken with 2 insurers that will be involved with the workers' compensation claims related to the candle factory. Both are accepting claims and thus far are responsive to those claims. Total insurance claims reported as of 10 a.m. today, 9,145. And it's hard to estimate how many folks are also uninsured. And remember, we have both homeowners and renters that would be potentially insured or uninsured for the value of their home and their belongings, or what is in their apartment or rental units. There is the same amount of assistance generally for renters as there is for homeowners from FEMA. And in fact, there are situations where you may qualify for both, depending on what your timeline looks like on rebuilding. But Department of Insurance response teams are being set up in Graves, Hopkins, Warren, and Muhlenberg. We will update once that comes online. They're going to make sure that these insurance companies are treating people fairly. Let's see, I believe that may be, oh no, we got a couple of other, again, things we're trying to do to help people. So this week, we were also able, following the federal disaster declaration, to get the IRS to extend the 2021 tax filing and other deadlines from April 15th to May 16th. And our Kentucky Department of Revenue will honor this special tax relief for individuals and households affected by the severe storms, tornadoes, and flooding who reside or have a business in Caldwell, Fulton, Graves, Hopkins, Marshall, Muhlenberg, Taylor, and Warren. That'll allow affected taxpayers until May 16th to file their income taxes and submit payments for individual income tax, corporate income tax, their withholding, or the limited liability entity tax. Means certain deadlines, quarterly payments, as well as the one for 2021 income tax returns will be postponed for the affected taxpayers. Again, I mean, at a time like this, you can't expect people to have the documentation needed, and so we're extending those deadlines. The President's federal disaster declaration also makes Kentuckians in those 8 counties eligible for a refund of Kentucky sales and use tax paid on the purchase of building materials permanently installed in the repair or replacement of structure damages in the 8 counties covered by the disaster declaration. So as you're rebuilding, if you are directly paying for building supplies, make sure you document those. You could get up to $6,000 in relief from sales tax per building. We'll put this out by a separate press release. We're increasing, and this is within the state, to qualified residential treatment care programs that serve children that have been struggling during COVID. These are places like Maryhurst and others. We have found a way to increase the funds that are provided to them to help them as they're making it through this pandemic. Some were struggling so much they were looking at shutting down. We'll have the direct information in the release. We are hurting, and we're still hurting. And it continues to be very painful. But we are not broken. We are not broken, even when it feels like it. We will clear this chaos and death from our towns, and we will rebuild our structures and our lives. And just like every person I talked to yesterday, the day before, the day before that, the day before that, including on Saturday, I'm not going anywhere, and this state is not going anywhere. We got a great commitment from the federal government that they're going to be with us too. Every step, every week, every month, and every year that it takes, we will get each one of these communities rebuilt. This is very personal to me, and we're going to make sure that it happens. All right, with that, we'll open it up to questions. I think we have 4 journalists here and a bunch on the line. So let's start with Tom.
Thanks, Governor. 2 things that just came to mind is the state going to be developing a website to link all this information. You gave a lot of things on a lot of different topics today. So we'll be doing that.
We should. It's a great suggestion. We're building this airplane while we're flying it, but we should centralize all this information, what's available to an individual that's been through the horrific, and then we need to get it out in paper too to some of the facilities out there to help them as we move forward as much as we can on some of this stuff. I hope we can set up in one location. It's just there's not one big location left in most of these places, and there's so many people helping. I mean, we got 1,200 Garden state employees, and you look at 10,000 people typically in Mayfield, and 3,700 in Dawson, and 370 in Bremen, and then put all the FEMA people on top and all the rest. We have about as many people helping as we do that live in these places, and God bless them.
My main question was, I see you issued an executive order on livestock disposal.
Yeah.
Can you describe the?
Yeah, so there is a statute or regulation about the amount of time that you have to do away with, clean up, destroy dead livestock. It's primarily dealing with disease, and we think it probably only applies to that. But there was concern that it could apply in this situation as well, and there are so many dead livestock that we know it's going to take more time. We are listening directly to our farmers. We know that there's going to be some long-term needs too. It's a farming community. You know, where do they get their feed from? Who do they typically sell to? What have the losses been there? So one of the early calls I made was that we needed USDA on the ground, and the federal government sped up how quickly that happened. Still working through all the rest of the needs, working directly with judges and their folks. We're going to find a solution to every concern. Carolina?
The number of people missing has dramatically gone down, which is great. Does this help the state kind of figure out where our death toll will stand, or is there really no way to figure that out at this point?
So every day that passes, the range of our death toll becomes more certain, and the likelihood that we will have significantly more death lessens. I am hearing at least rumors that we will add one today, and perhaps someone unexpected. Our number missing requires someone report them missing, and so there may be more that are out there. I hope that additional deaths that we see will be in single digits. They could come from people that we find, and they could also come from people who are currently hospitalized, though every day that passes that the number doesn't go up or go up significantly is a good day, all considered. Certainly as we get now some pretty close to certainty on the candle factory, that means our toll is first much less than I thought it would be. I thought we were going to lose about as many people in that factory as we have overall. So it's I think we're getting closer and closer to what that final number will be. Phil.
Governor, do you have any thoughts about the litigation that's been filed about the candle factory, the allegations that workers were forced to work with the tornado on them?
Yeah, I know litigation has been filed in the candle factory, but I don't have any independent knowledge of any of the allegations that are there. I did see it, and I've never seen anything like the total wreckage and steel and I mean big trucks that I say they're on the roof. The roof wasn't there. By the time I got there, and this is just an hour after daylight, there must have been 8, 10, 12. It's hard when you're trying to take it in, backhoes and heavy equipment trying to pull things off of it. I mean, it's a miracle we only lost 8. I don't know what happened in there that night. I do know it was hit directly by one of the most powerful tornadoes I think we'll ever see on record. Lawrence.
First, a quick clarification. The 75 number today, is that one more than yesterday? One above yesterday?
Yes, it adds that individual in Bowling Green that is reported to have had a heart attack in the cleanup.
Okay. We heard the president's public comments. Can you give us some insight into the private conversations you had about
Sure.
Kentucky?
The president was very caring from the moment that he landed. I think he from our private conversations, 2 things were clear. Number one, that he genuinely cares, and that was evident. And it was evident when the Secret Service was trying to get him to go this way, and there was a family over that way, and it was absolutely clear. And second, that there is a full commitment by the federal government, even to do things that they've never done before to help us. We have gotten a yes on virtually everything that we've asked for, and the speed at which we've gotten them is incredible. So to him, to our FEMA administrator, to our Secretary of Homeland Security, and everybody in between, the federal response could not be better than it has been. Al Cross.
Thank you, Governor. It was quite an eventful day yesterday, and aside from getting 100% federal funding for 30 days, what other surprises did you have yesterday?
Yesterday? First, there were really tough moments yesterday. I had not been able to get that far back into Dawson Springs, and it was even worse than I could tell. And it was painful. But to also see the number of people that would say that they are blessed to be alive was pretty special. And remember, in this, 8 blocks in any direction, nothing standing. Everybody that is sorting through the rubble knows each other. And, it's, I said before, the trauma kind of seeps into your skin. But I will say that having the president there and especially in Mayfield created an energy. And you know what? I was just happy for one day, because it had been, 5 or 6 days, for just one day since this happened, that there seemed to be this really positive energy. The president of the United States was there. I'm not sure I expected to feel that. And you could see it on people's faces. There's a woman who said, he's in Mayfield. And I think that was the feeling. Whether or not you voted for him or you voted for me, we're both trying to do our very best for you. And I could absolutely see that the president coming to Mayfield and to Dawson Springs. I said yesterday, I never thought I'd get to introduce a president of the United States. I never thought I'd get him to Dawson Springs, but by God, I wish it was for different reasons. Jack Bramer, Herald Leader.
Yes, Governor, of the 138 Kentuckians injured, where did most of them occur? Do you have a county by county breakdown of the injured? And do you know how many were injured in the Mayfield candle factory?
I think that the last number I had is that there were 17 people hospitalized from the Mayfield candle factory. I do not have and that was yesterday. I think I got that information. If I got it the day before, I apologize. It's been a lot the last couple of days. Generally, Hopkins County area, 21 of those. I think we had one person in Kenton and Logan. Graves County area, so people would be transferred. Probably 24. Those would be there. 26, 52-ish. I think in the Graves County extended area. Those include hospitals in Paducah. Taylor Regional had at least 12 who were there, if not 13. One in Frankfurt here, one in Georgetown, 5 in Owensboro. So this made impacts in different places. Well, let me back up. 22 are down at Vanderbilt, and 6 in Union City, Tennessee. So add another 30 on to, so over 100 from Graves County, I think is what we're pretty close to, though Hopkins and Graves are close enough to where you could also be transferring some people who are hurt in Dawson down to Vanderbilt. That's the best I can do, Jack. Karen Czar.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, could you talk a little bit more about unemployment? There are already people online who are worried, saying they're afraid they're going to end up in some endless loop like we saw in the pandemic. Is there anything you could say to ease their concerns? Thank you.
I'm going to say that we're going to have people in person in each of these counties processing your claims in front of you. We're going to get it done. We're absolutely going to get it done. Piper Hudspeth Blackburn, Associated Press.
Hello. Thank you, Governor. My question has to do with cleanup. Is Karen Czar still? Can you hear me? I don't see my.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so how long is this initial stage of cleanup supposed to last? And what do you say to those Kentuckians who sort of feel like the damage is insurmountable and it might last forever? Thank you.
Yeah, the cleanup is going to take time depending on the structure that we're talking about. And if you've seen it, it'll take at least weeks. If we can do it in weeks, it will be incredible. I believe that we'll be hauling debris out of some of these locations for up to a month. Director, you have any other thoughts? Okay, Director Dawson.
So thank you for the question. This is going to be one of the largest pieces of the recovery. In fact, as I leave this briefing, I'm going back into a meeting with FEMA and our other federal partners to flesh out the debris removal plan. We're going to hold webinars in the next days, possibly one tomorrow. We'll announce that. Debris removal is one of the most important pieces because this is part and parcel to rebuilding, not just the city infrastructure, but for all of our homeowners. So you'll hear more about this, but again, please allow us to manage expectations. This is a long recovery, and the process to put all the programs on the road, as you can see from the governor's relationship with the president, the actual personnel are on the ground immediately, and they're all working in that direction. So we're moving very quickly. The plan will be announced very shortly. And then after the plan is announced, counties and the state and the federal government will all come together. There'll be contractors that each county can engage. We also have federal assets and state assets that are working toward that.
From being on the ground, it also depends on which place we're talking about. Bremen had dump trucks up and down the road they were able to bring in from Muhlenberg County, already loading up. A huge death toll given the population of the area. Fewer structures overall in the city. Their debris removal is going to go a lot faster than Dawson, which is huge numbers of homes, Mayfield, which is huge numbers of homes and really big government buildings. So it is ongoing. And a lot of it will depend on the level of resources as they continue. We're going to have every resource from the state. We're going to have every resource from the federal government. We've got a lot of great volunteers that are out there right now, too. Debbie Yetter, Courier-Journal.
Hi, Governor. If I could ask about COVID-19 for a minute. With Omicron spreading rapidly in more than 30 states now, has it been identified in Kentucky? And are you all worried about spread in this area affected by the tornado, with people possibly more crowded together, routines disrupted, and so forth?
Yes, worried about spread in the area of the tornado. One of the reasons we're trying to get people out of a shelter and into a state park is we can create a little more distance. We can also give them a room of their own. I have not been notified of our first case of Omicron, but it's here. It's unquestionably here. It's already everywhere, and the speed is significant that it doubles in. The question of what it's going to lead to all depends on the level of infection and some questions that we don't yet know. First, they're trying to figure out exactly how much faster it spreads than Delta. It appears to spread faster, and how resistant it is to level of vaccination. So those are two questions for how many people will get it. Other set of questions is how sick does it make you? Because it can still do a lot of damage even if it makes you half as sick, but infects twice as many people. And so it's going to be those two levers that will ultimately tell us where we're going. Also, the amount of therapeutics and vaccinations and boosters we're getting right now will impact that as well. I mean, it looks like if you've had both shots and a booster, if you get that, you're less likely to get it. And if you get it, you're probably going to be okay. I can't imagine that having both shots won't put you in a better place if you get it about how sick you get in whatever spectrum of how deadly or how sick that it makes you. If you are unvaccinated, you've probably gone through Delta. It's been awful. And it looks like this thing can come right along behind it and reinfect you. So, I mean, please get vaccinated. If you've had Delta, I hope that it provides some level of immunity to you. But after what you've been through, why in the world risk that if you can get a series of shots that ultimately help you out? Corinne Boyer, WEKU.
Hi, Governor. You mentioned a couple of challenges authorities are facing, like FEMA going door to door to houses that are no longer standing, and the need for family members of people who are missing to submit DNA. How are authorities responding to those challenges? And then there's some concern among communities about people who are undocumented staying in state parks. Is that a concern they should have? Thank you.
Anybody who lost their home, we want to have a place to stay. Listen, if somebody has got kids and all of a sudden have absolutely no place to stay, I want them to have a roof over their head. So we're going to help people out at state parks that lost their home. How we're responding to the challenges, we continue to spread the word, which is the main way, to family members and across the region. Spreading it across the state is really helpful too as they check in. on people. The His House Ministries not only can also take phone calls about missing individuals, as can sheriff's offices and others throughout the region. So we know there are likely some other folks out there. We want to know about as many of them as possible. Most likely, that person that you think is missing is okay, but we can connect you to them. What was the other challenge? We'll get you an additional response if you need one. Hannah Saad, the Paducah Sun.
Thank you, Governor. I was just speaking with some of the residents in Mayfield, and I was wondering if there's any statewide initiative to help folks who maybe lost their cars or don't have ways to get out to resources if they live kind of far away. Is there any statewide, or are you aware of any private organizations that are providing transportation assistance?
We're working on that piece. In the first several days, our goal was safety, security, planning. But yes, transportation is going to be important. If you see what this thing did to cars, they're most likely not going to be salvageable either. I do know that there are adjusters, if you are insured, that are on site, that are there. We do want to try to streamline that, though, for people. And then, we've had folks reaching out about other things that they can do to help. We're going to be trying to connect some of those resources. Certainly, we can title a new or a used vehicle for folks as they replace it at any of these facilities that we're setting up. I mean, these folks don't have a driver's license likely. Their last car title, they're going to need to turn it in. They're going to need a new one as well. So that point's well taken. And transportation. Right now, we've used school buses to get people from shelters to state parks. Last question, Grace McKenna, WHAS 11.
Sorry about that, Governor. I'd like to pivot back to COVID for a quick moment, if we could. Coming up on the holiday season, I know we were all concerned about surges during the holidays last year. Could you talk about the role of the booster, in helping to prevent some of those surges, especially as we see Omicron starting to spread inevitably to Kentucky, like you mentioned?
Yeah, Christmas is supposed to be a wonderful, special time where we celebrate a life and life itself, salvation, what is good in mankind, the hope. And then we have a new year where we make resolutions to be better, where there are new chances. They are supposed to be wonderful, hopeful, life-affirming holidays. And last year they were deadly. We lost a lot of Kentuckians through the spread of COVID-19 during those holidays. This year we don't have to. Last year you couldn't be fully vaccinated, or it would have been very hard to be fully vaccinated by Christmas. This year everybody can be. And this year we have a booster as well, because waning immunity is real. I believe the largest single factor in what type of surge that we are going to see over the holidays and into the beginning of the year is how many people get their booster. If you do it, you're pretty well protected. You'll free up that hospital capacity if it comes in a crunch that others will need. So please, for the holiday season, if you haven't gotten vaccinated, go get vaccinated. Even if it's your first shot, go ahead and get it. It'll help. If you've been fully vaccinated and it's time for your booster, go get it. Don't wait until after the holidays. Go get it as quickly as you can. And then just think about the way you're holding your holiday gathering, if everybody is vaccinated, if everybody is boosted, and those that aren't. Really consider masks while you're inside and close together. That protects everyone. And maybe just have a slightly smaller gathering than you did last year. Listen, we can do that safely. We can wear a mask in a gathering if it's needed. We can have a slightly smaller gathering, because you know what? We're pretty blessed, especially when you look at a whole bunch of people that don't have homes in Western Kentucky. So, everybody just try to protect one another. And we've seen horrific loss of life. We've seen destruction at a level nobody has ever seen. So I see the outpouring of love. Take care of each other, and we'll continue to update on services, on loss of life, and on how we are going to dig out. We're not broken. We will rebuild, and we'll get through it, and we'll get through it together. Thank y'all. Executive.
So again, Governor Andy Beshear speaking some words of hope into all of the residents, to all of his constituents affected by the tornadoes. And, you know, we get new videos and pictures and new stories from people there whose homes were destroyed, offices destroyed, buildings destroyed. This is affecting all of their lives very much so. So hopefully tomorrow we'll be speaking with some of those people directly affected by the storms. So don't go away here on Live Now. We have some big stories that we want to be getting to, specifically coming out of the Biden administration, talking about the border. We know some of these migrant families who were separated. There was word that they were going to get a $450,000 payout per family. Well, that has since been dropped. We speak with the newspaper reporter who actually broke the story and now is doing the follow-up. That's coming up in 2 minutes.
Fox is Michelle Hackman, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. And Michelle, thanks for being with us. We wanted to follow up on a story that you had broken a couple of months ago regarding possible civil lawsuits being filed from families that were separated at the border during the Trump administration back in 2018, the height of the migrant crisis. Now you have some new reporting to suggest that the DOJ might not be moving forward with that. Can you offer some more thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's confirmed by me and a bunch of other outlets that today the Justice Department let the ACLU, who were sort of the lead negotiators for these separated families, know that instead of going for a universal settlement, which is what the original idea was, and I think you mentioned that one of the numbers that had been suggested at one point was $450,000, up to $450,000 a person in damages. And after we reported that figure and the fact of the settlement negotiations, we know that the Justice Department went to the ACLU lawyers and said, you know, because of the pressure that we're getting, the public pressure, that number is going to have to go down. And today they let them know, you know, we're not going to be able to do a settlement at all.
So is your reporting suggesting that they kind of did buckle to the public pressure and the backlash of when you first reported just the idea of this?
Yeah, so, you know, I don't want to speculate about today's move because we haven't reached folks in the Justice Department to speak to that, but we do know that, you know, DOJ told the ACLU lawyers after our story broke that the public, that this had suddenly become public had changed the nature of what they were able to do. You know, initially, President Biden was caught off guard by the number. He denied it. He had to walk that back. And so they definitely felt like they needed to move the numbers down from where they were because of that public outcry.
But there is some type of avenue going forward on an individual case-by-case basis. Is that right?
That's right. So the DOJ, you know, in a statement, didn't close the door to the idea that maybe they might try to settle some individual claims. I want to put this in perspective. I mean, it wasn't just out of the goodness of their hearts that they wanted to settle. It's because the work cut out for them is really, really intense. They have at least, you know, 900 separate claims with it asking for an average of $3 million in damages. They have 15 or 16 different lawsuits that they're facing. And, you know, they had told lawyers, don't sue us. We are going to do a universal settlement. And so I think they're facing a lot more lawsuits, a lot more work, and potentially, you know, in some cases, I think we could see even higher payouts than what the settlements would have landed at. You know, the Justice Department had told these people, don't sue us because we'll include you in a universal settlement. And so now that that settlement offer is off the table, I think the Justice Department's going to see a lot more lawsuits.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. And so let's talk about the Biden administration's response, because, you know, when this story had broke, they were really offering mixed signals and messages. You know, is it your view that they were caught off guard and they had to have some response? Because you heard from, you know, the president, but also Jen Psaki at the White House press briefing initially say that, you know, they were kind of on not the same page.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on something that I don't know perfectly well, but from the indication we've been able to get, we don't know that President Biden had a specific idea of what was being negotiated, and maybe he was supportive of the general idea, but didn't know the numbers. That's certainly how it appeared to us, because he sort of initially fully denied our reporting and then had to walk that back the next day.
You know, the Department of Justice, is this a priority for them at the moment, or is this kind of not going to be as in the headlines as it has been in the past since your first reporting?
You know, it was a priority for them for sure. I can't say exactly where it's going to rank now that they are going to, you know, the Justice Department is in this really uncomfortable spot where they're going to have to fight these lawsuits. And I don't know if that involves actually defending the family separations policy or negotiating down the award numbers, but it puts them in a really awkward position because it's the opposite of what they campaigned on.
Right, including, and while I have you, and that's another policy that the courts have ruled that has to be put in place yet again, and that's the Remain in Mexico policy. Can you just give us an update on that? I know you've been following that very closely, but the Biden administration really forced to go through with this policy.
Sure. So that's a separate issue. This is a program where asylum seekers are required to live in Mexico while their asylum claims are basically being considered. It's a policy that Biden called dangerous and immoral on the campaign. And it's funny, you know, we've gotten indications that people in the White House and the Department of Homeland Security, once they were dealing with this sort of historic surge at the border this summer, had sort of floated the idea of what if there's a way that we could bring back Remain in Mexico, but make it kinder and gentler and not as dangerous for the migrants. That was what, you know, one of the big criticisms of the program. And for them, they sort of almost got this reprieve because a month later, a court ruled that they had to do it. And so they've gone ahead.
All right. Well, we appreciate your reporting there. And we're going to be continuing to follow this as well. We're here, as you know, in Phoenix, Arizona, and there's been an influx of illegal crossings at the Yuma sector down on the border. So we appreciate all that immigration roundup there. Michelle Hackman, we'll talk to you again.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 2-minute break, and when we come back, we're going into some COVID-19 news. We're getting new information about the Omicron variant. Our Fox 13 Tampa team about to break it down.
We have new insight now on the Omicron variant of COVID. It gives us a much better idea of what we're up against this winter. And this comes as new cases are piling up, and Omicron is now quickly spreading in Central Florida. Fox 13's Craig Patrick has been going through this data and joins us now to break it all down for us. Hey, Craig.
Hey there, Chris. There's more to work through, which is good news. As more data is coming in, we have a much better idea, and it's all confirming the initial studies, at least substantiating it, that show Omicron is, in fact, less likely to cause serious disease, compared certainly to Delta or the original strain of COVID-19. But it's also showing, certainly, that some people are still very vulnerable and at heightened risk of becoming seriously ill. At the same time, we have evidence that at least suggests there appear to be more cases through Central Florida than the stats currently show. Like much of Florida, the Orlando area tests wastewater to detect the presence of COVID-19. And new tests show the Omicron variant is suddenly the predominant variant in Orange County. Here's Orange County's Mayor Jerry Demings.
While we can now say with certainty that Omicron is here, the much more serious and deadlier Delta variant remains primary in terms of hospitalizations.
The Delta variant also accounts for nearly all the hospitalizations across the nation and as such remains a serious risk. But infectious disease experts say the Omicron variant will likely spread much faster. And they warn us when we see the charts in the coming weeks, it will probably take off like a vertical line, just as it has in Africa and Europe. The good news is that the latest research continues to show it's milder than Delta. That is far less likely to make you seriously ill. Research out of Hong Kong suggests that's because while COVID replicates in our nose, throat, and lungs, the Omicron variant has a harder time replicating in our lungs, which can help keep it from going from an upper to a far more serious lower respiratory illness. But the bad news is that research also continues to show it is more contagious than Delta. And while most people who catch Omicron may not get seriously ill, some are still at greater risk of being hospitalized if they do catch it, including seniors and people with certain health issues like a weakened immune system. On the upside, studies from Africa show the average hospital stay for Omicron is shorter, 2+ days versus 8+ days for Delta. But even if a comparatively small percentage of those who do get it need to be hospitalized, and they go in for a comparatively shorter period of time, that could still strain our hospitals if many more people catch it overall. Right now, while cases are rising in Florida, our state and the South have the lowest rates of infection in the nation, and it's nearly all Delta. In other states like New York, Omicron is currently ranging 3 to 13% from place to place. But our nation's leading experts are expecting Omicron to change the map by early next year.
We expect to see the proportion of Omicron cases here in the United States continue to grow in the coming weeks.
Now, of all COVID cases, and again, it's mainly Delta at this point across much of the nation, our nation is reporting around 140,000 cases per day on average. To put that in context, that's up some 40% over the past 2 weeks, up 70% since the beginning of November. We have also around 60,000 hospitalized across the nation. That's up more than 20% in the past 2 weeks. Again, the good news here is that all the studies are showing that Omicron is milder than Delta in the original strain in terms of how sick you become from it in general. But that said, how does it compare, say, then to flu season? Well, in terms of severity, maybe not that much, but when compounded with, when you have a confluence of flu season with Omicron, and you have many, many more people catching it all at the same time, that's where health officials are very worried, because on top of that, Delta also does not appear to be going away fully, and it appears to be certainly on the rise in other parts of the country.
Yeah, you mentioned the hospitalizations going up 20% in the last few weeks, and we've heard that may largely be because Delta is still prevalent in a lot of areas. So, Craig, how many adults in the U.S. still haven't been vaccinated at this point, and what more can the rest of us do as the virus spreads?
Well, health experts say the key for those who are vaccinated, which would be 85% of adults at this point, to make sure that you get a booster when it's time for you to get a booster within 6 months or after 6 months of getting the first 2 shots. As far as the unvaccinated, right now it's hanging right at 15%. That's 15% of the adult population that is now at heightened risk of becoming sick. And the studies are also showing that natural immunity and just the first 2 shots of vaccination alone do not provide substantial protection against Omicron, which is why they so strongly urge vaccination, full vaccination, and then a 3rd shot. the booster shot as the best form of protection, combined with wearing masks indoors when going out in public.
Okay. Craig Patrick with the latest on the COVID situation in the country. Thanks, Craig.
All right, after this break, we'll have a full sports breakdown for you. All of the major headlines that you need to know about coming up in 2 minutes.
All right, and joining me now on LiveNOW from Fox, just to give us a sports recap of the top sports headlines, is Dan Lust, sports legal expert. We always appreciate your time, Dan. Major news breaking late last night, very late last night, and that, of course, Urban Meyer is out as the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach. Did you see this coming, and why do you think they did it so late?
Yeah, I did see it coming. I think anyone that's been following the story has. For Urban Meyer, he's obviously a first-time NFL coach. He's had great success at the college level with Ohio State and Florida. There hasn't been the strongest track record of college coaches going to the NFL, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll lose your job. But from a job security perspective, there was this kind of ugly incident with Urban Meyer and a young female at a bar in Ohio earlier this year. So that was maybe step one. But in the last week, we've seen something kind of odd. Basically, every day, a new story trickling out of Jacksonville in some way, shape, or form that the players or the coaches are unhappy with them. And that kind of capped off, yesterday, almost a comical story. Urban Meyer was alleged to have kicked his kicker. Right? He literally was alleged from this kicker, Josh Lambo, former kicker with the team, for kicking him because he missed kicks. So, at a certain point, like when have we had an allegation of a coach hitting a player, or even a player and a coach? Latrell Sprewell, maybe Bobby Knight back in the day. It just doesn't happen. So it started to become a point where you couldn't ignore it anymore. And Chad Kahn made the decision last night. I'm hearing some potential, I don't know if you want to buy it, but there was maybe a suspension or a fine coming for Urban Meyer. So I think the Jaguars maybe caught wind of it and then decided to cut bait.
So Dan, what you're saying is this was a kind of a succession of different items that led to this firing, because it happened pretty fast.
Yeah, I think it was mounting. The issue had always been Urban Meyer signed a huge contract. It was a 6-year, multi-million-dollar contract. And in order to get out from under that, if you're just going to let go of him for performance reasons, you probably have to pay him a percentage of that. But if you're trying to mount a case where you could fire him for cause, right, you have to have a lot of evidence. You have to feel pretty confident. And to fire a coach mid-year in the NFL doesn't normally happen, especially for a first-year coach. You had to feel pretty good. So, yeah, you said it right. It's kind of a mounting evidence, mounting different incidents, and it finally culminated in one, whether you want to believe it or not, an allegation that you struck a player is not going to look good in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, of course. And he had only coached 13 games. I I guess kind of looking ahead, though, will he have a future, in the NFL coaching or, at the collegiate level? Do you think he's kind of, done after this?
Yeah, there's terms being thrown around and he's a pariah at this point. I mean, keep in mind, Urban Meyer has retired from the coaching ranks, twice, 3 times if you ever want to count it. This most recent time he went to be an analyst at Fox Sports, and people thought he might have been done. He might come back. So Urban Meyer has left coaching. Certainly has enough money, and if he doesn't want to coach again, he doesn't have to. But he's going to have to rehabilitate his image, maybe some time away from football before he comes back to coaching. If you told me today, Andrew, that he never coaches again, I would certainly believe it. I don't think he needs to, and I think he's got a lot of repairing of his image to do. But certainly he doesn't have to. He's not required to come back. It's not a John Gruden situation where I'd say it's impossible for him to come back. But I'd say it's unlikely that Urban Meyer's back. If he does, power to him. Everyone deserves a second, third chance. But this is going to be a lot to come back from a pretty embarrassing exit out of Jacksonville.
Yeah, a lot of these stories happening in the NFL this season. I had forgotten the John Gruden situation already until you had brought it up, though. Urban Meyer, definitely a colorful figure in pro football. Let's talk still about another colorful figure in pro football, and that, of course, is Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington football team now. And there's an investigation going on in that club. What's the latest on that, Dan?
Oh man, this Snyder story. Every time you think that the train stops, it just keeps going again. Credit to the Washington Post. They've been continuing to dig on this. It's not lost on me that Jeff Bezos has the connection to the Post. And Jeff Bezos is rumored to want to buy an NFL team, and he keeps going at Dan Snyder. So, if you want to, do your little pinboard and try to figure out why the Washington Post keeps going at it, very, very fair. So here's where we're at. I think last you and I spoke about it. The world was paying attention to these leaked emails that cost, we mentioned John Gruden his job. So when these, there was talk of these 650,000 secret emails, only like a handful of which were leaked and cost Gruden his job, there was a groundswell of release the report. We want to know what's in the emails. So there had been an investigation that was conducted into the Washington football team. That's really where the story kind of comes and goes. We don't know what was done in that investigation. It's really been locked up by the NFL. They don't want to release the investigative report. All we know is that from this, these certain emails came out, and Dan Snyder was fined $10 million. What came out this past week is very interesting. Essentially, Dan Snyder hired a law firm, a lawyer named Beth Wilkinson and her law firm, to investigate his own team. So the narrative for a couple of months had been, hey, the fix was in, this law firm, they were hired by Snyder, they were always going to try to protect him. The narrative has all of a sudden flipped on its head. At least according to the Washington Post, Snyder had been going through great lengths to basically thwart this lawyer's investigation of his own team, even going so far, former Washington general counsel, of suing Beth Wilkinson to prevent her from giving information to the NFL. So now you suddenly have a picture of this lawyer that Snyder maybe handpicked to kind of rubber stamp it and get him off the hook, a lawyer that's now out to really seek the truth. And when we really circle in, Andrew, it's very interesting. The 2009 incident that resulted in a $1.6 million sexual harassment settlement as alleged by the Post. Snyder's been trying to cover this thing up and keep it secret. And Beth Wilkinson, the attorney that Snyder hired himself, was poking around and relayed the results of that investigation to the NFL. We don't exactly still know what happened, but Congress has now circled back. They want to know what's going on. They want to know about this 2009 investigation. So all of a sudden, it's all alarms going off at Washington HQ.
And there have been some reporting to suggest Roger Goodell's role in all of this, if he has, tipped the scales or put a hand in this. Is that true? Is he, interfering or not?
Well, it's the allegation from this Post article is that Snyder was trying to obstruct the investigation. And it's a big allegation. So when Goodell was asked to comment, his comment was pretty interesting. He goes, he's aware of the Post story, but he doesn't believe that Snyder's obstructionist tactics actually influenced the outcome of the investigation. So, if Snyder attempted to thwart the investigation, that should be a crime in and of itself, right? You don't have to murder someone to get charged with a crime, or attempted murder, attempted assault. We'll see if Goodell wants to do anything here, but I believe this is new information to Goodell. I don't think he knew the extent that Snyder and his team had gone to try to thwart the investigation. But, from the comments we saw from Goodell, I don't think he's ready to assert any type of additional punishment, particularly on the million type fine that was given to Snyder. But yeah, optics are not good. You have former employees protesting Washington football games. You have Congress coming after Washington. You have Goodell. And again, Andrew, I pointed it out. Why is this happening? The Washington Post here. Again, these teams don't come up for sale that often. So, you connect the dots here if you want.
No, that's so interesting. I had not connected those dots. And of course, they are still under a lot of pressure to pick a name, right, Dan?
Yeah, Washington football team. You and I had spoken about this, in previous episodes. There have been teams, most famously the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, who have really botched their name changes. And I think that's just one more kind of eyesore on the Washington football team. Their name, when announcers try to refer to them, is called the football team. So in addition to all this chaos going on at HQ, you don't have a real team. Like, how hard is it to pick a team name, pick a logo? They've been sitting on it for about 2 years. So I think they're worried about trademark disputes and whatnot. But just, I don't know, not much is going right for Washington. The team is not terrible this year, but from an administrative level, from an organizational structure level, it's a lot of chaos there.
Dan, last topic, and I had seen you tweeting about this earlier today, and this regards a prominent player in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, and his brother getting a lot of flack on social media. And let's talk about that. I know it's not a major headline, but, Mahomes is playing in Kansas City tonight, I believe. Let's just talk about that for a little bit.
Andrew, it is a major story. If you are on social media in any way, shape, or form, for some reason, Jackson Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes' brother, is like the most hated person on social media. Why is that? Number of levels, right? He's of the younger TikTok generation, so maybe people don't like that. There's a very kind of infamous incident where he was dancing on a memorial that was set up for the late safety for the Washington football team, Sean Taylor. So, if you want to say the guy's entitled, I'm seeing the comments left and right. The latest on Jackson Mahomes, I guess he went to a bar in Kansas City, obviously where his brother is famous, and took to social media to try to cancel, and try to make this local establishment feel bad for not treating him right, not giving him VIP treatment. And this restaurant, I think it's SOT Bar in Kansas City, I'll give him a shout out, wrote one of the most scathing commentaries and scathing responses to Mahomes, and just called him entitled, called him a brat, said, maybe you shouldn't be dancing on people's memorials. And good for them. I don't think Jackson Mahomes has any fans at all. I'm not sure why why he has such a huge following, but yeah, I think it was kind of a little bit of karma biting him. He took to social media to take out a small business, and the small business that people outside of Kansas City have never heard of now gets a big win in taking a victory lap across social media here.
And Dan, just for those of us who don't follow family members of star athletes, does Jackson Mahomes, is he an athlete in and of himself, or no, he's just a brother?
Do you call TikTok dancing an athletic sport?
Okay.
No, he is not. And maybe at some point he was like a middle school superstar, but as far as I'm aware, he is no Jordan Palmer or anything like that. That's the younger brother of Aaron Rodgers. Nothing like that.
Okay. Dan Must, as always, we appreciate your time. If we don't speak before the holidays, have a great holiday.
You too, and always a pleasure coming on with you, Andrew.
All right, Dan, have a good one.
All right, good stuff right there with the recap with Andrew Kraft. We are going to go into the White House briefing as they are talking about all of these topics. I believe that actually when we were talking about the border and the payouts being dropped by the Biden administration, I believe that was a question that was asked. And then also the Medal of Honor ceremony happening at the White House today, really moving event inside in Washington, D.C. Kentucky breakdown on the updates from Governor Beshear as so many of these residents are still reeling from those tornadoes. And then, of course, tomorrow, make sure to join us here on LiveNOW as we take the Kim Potter trial live. That will be, I believe, day 8 of the trial, and Kim Potter herself expected to take the stand and testify. So that is big news coming out of that trial. And like I said, we'll have it here for you from beginning to end. Well, we're going to go out to the White House briefing. Thank you so much for being with us here on LiveNOW from Fox.
We made it. Hello. Heads up, indeed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay. So joining us today is Deputy National Climate Advisor Ali Zadie, where he helps implement the President's domestic climate agenda, coordinating the all-of-government approach to tackle the climate crisis, creating good-paying union jobs, and advance environmental justice. Ali was formerly at Stanford's Precourt Institute for Energy, where he taught graduate students in STEM on economic and technology policy topics related to climate change. For 8 years, Zadie served in key roles within the Obama-Biden administration, including as the Associate Director for Natural Resources, Energy, and Science at OMB, as Deputy Director of Energy Policy for the Domestic Policy Council, and as a Senior Director for Cabinet Affairs. He is here today to discuss the Biden-Harris-led